Welcome back to Operation Evil. This is episode 52, The Murder of Daniel and Linda. I'm your host, Nyoka.
I'm Rachel.
And we have a special guest today. We have Alexis from, go ahead and tell your business.
Hello. I have a business on Etsy, Black Cats and Bitchcraft. Feel free to check it out.
Yeah, she has made Operation Evil like coasters and other things that we've put on our page in the past. And she's here joining us today. And it's been a big surprise. We didn't expect it, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So this story, Rachel's going to be telling you, and there's just so much about this story. It's amazing. And I can see why you picked it. I took in so much of it. In the last night alone, I took in so much of this story. It was insane. But basically, it comes down to the murder of Daniel and Linda. And was it right? Was it wrong? Was there cheating or lying? Was she crazy or abused? I mean, this episode is going to go into so many different things that factored into this murder and what happened. And I can't wait to discuss it. So whenever you're ready to take it away, Rachel, I'm ready to listen.
Okay. Yeah, and this is another one that it's been like an obsession. I've been obsessed with this story since I was a child. I don't know, this happened in like 89 or something. So the movie, maybe there was a movie about it, came out in the 90s. So I don't know, maybe I was like 8 or something, but I watched the movie more than once. Most kids watch Disney movies, unlike my child and Alexis watch like horror movies. And then we're a different breed, okay?
We are.
But yeah, it's unique because like watching it as a kid, the story to me then was different than it is now.
Yeah, you get a different perspective, I'm sure. What was that movie called?
Yes. A Woman Scorned.
Okay.
And Meredith Baxter, which was the mother on Family Ties, played her.
I remember that show. Oh.
And I think the guy that played Dan, some things I heard Dan, some things I heard Daniel, but I think the guy that played him was the guy that was the father on Seventh Heaven.
Oh.
You remember that show?
I do. I was never big on that show, but I do remember it. Did you know they're redoing this story as well, like currently?
What?
Yeah, there's a podcast called Dirty John. Do you remember hearing about Dirty John?
That's right. There's TV show or Netflix or whatever.
So season 2, I guess this is a whole different story.
Isn't it out now?
It might be. I don't know. I haven't watched it, but if you guys aren't catching on yet, which you might not have because I wasn't aware of her name either, but this story is about a woman named Betty Broderick, right?
Broderick.
Yes. and Dirty John's doing like a season 2 on her, which is like what that movie's about that you were obsessed with back in the day.
Yeah. All right. So I guess we'll just get right into the story. Nyoka, I'm sorry I don't have, and Alexis, I'm sorry I don't have video because, I don't know how to work technology.
It's okay.
And like I said, interject either one of you anytime you want to just make a comment or whatever. Okay, so Elizabeth and Daniel Broderick, they met in 1965 at a party in Indiana. Now, like we were just mentioning, referring to her as Betty in the media and things like that, I never knew that her name was Elizabeth, but everyone called her Betty, or I think Dan called her Bets. And she was labeled a woman scorned, and she was also labeled a crazy, jealous person. Betty shot and killed her ex-husband and his wife in 1989. Dan from Pittsburgh, he married Betty, which Betty was from New York. I mean, they weren't really that much different. They kind of grew up the same values. They were both raised Catholic. in large families. Like Betty came from a family of like 6 kids, and then Dan a family of like 9 kids, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They married in New York in 1969, and they moved in together into Dan's dorm room while he was going to the Cornell University. And she says that once that they were married, their dynamics of like their relationship changed. She said the way that they met was he introduced himself by passing a napkin with his name, like his full name written out on it, like first, middle, initial, last, and then like the third or whatever. And it said like whatever his title was, like MD something something. I don't know. I just think that's very like presumptuous, I guess. Don't you think that's weird?
He was making it known like I'm smart and educated.
Yeah.
Having the MD there.
On a napkin.
On a napkin.
On a napkin. She said that they had a very like gender role marriage too. Like Dan was in charge of everything, like when it came to the money and finances and all that stuff. Which later on they had children, she was the one who took care of like the house and the kids, all the kids' activities and all that stuff. Their first daughter, Kim, was born in 1970. The following year, Dan started school and their second daughter was born. So he had started, it might have been it wasn't Notre Dame, I don't think, and it wasn't Cornell. There was like, it might have been Harvard, which I'll kind of go into the timeline, or not a timeline, but like his schooling the way, because he did school for a lot of years.
He did.
And the thing was, and the thing about it was that it was said that, or Betty always said, that she was the one that worked while he was in school.
Yeah. I heard she would like sell, not Avon, but you know what I mean? Like stuff like that, or Tupperware.
Well, and it's funny that you say that though, because I read something where she did sell the Avon too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, odds and end jobs.
Yeah, and she had studied at the College of Mount St. Vincent, which was in the Bronx. And she had a degree in early childhood development, so she would do some small teaching jobs on the side too, I believe. So in 1973, a third child was born. I think it might have been a little boy, and he died shortly after his birth. And Betty said that Dan was away on a ski trip and he became very upset with her for this happening, like it's her fault, because it ruined his trip.
It ruined his trip. Oh, my bad.
Yeah. Now, these are the kind of things that we'll kind of get into where it's almost like a he said, she said kind of thing, because some things you'll read or listen to, and it's like Betty is painted this one way and then Dan is painted the other way. So there's a lot of back and forth. Now, because of this, the death of the baby, Betty said that Dan would not allow her to use birth control anymore. And which you and I were talking about this the other day, Nyoka, about the Catholic thing, like birth control usage and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But in my head, as soon as,
I believe that they're not for the birth control pill, or they weren't at that time, probably.
Well, and I wondered, like, did she say that just to make Dan look bad, or was it just a part of their religion?
I don't know. She was definitely Catholic, from what I understand, and he was too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So she had 2 abortions.
Now, this is where it contradicts, because I don't think they believe in abortions.
Exactly.
So yes. I don't understand why birth control versus, I don't know.
And it's almost like if she did have the abortion. Right. And if she did have the abortions, then she would have had to have hid them from him.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Betty became depressed and she attempted suicide for the first time after this happened. She said that she started to feel like she was trapped and that she was cut off from her family. And I think she means like her mother, her father, like not like her, her immediate family, like her extended family or whatever. In 1975, the family moved from New York or Massachusetts, wherever they were, to California. And this is when Dan's career started really taking off. He was a very successful malpractice lawyer. And then, okay, so here's where I'm going to kind of go into his education. He started at Notre Dame, which is that's where, like, what school he was attending when him and Betty met, and where, they got married and they were living at the dorm. Or no. They were living together when he was at Cornell. So he graduated from Notre Dame with an undergraduate degree. Then he went to Cornell Medical College. After that, he continued on to Harvard and got a law degree. So, yeah, dude, like, had some high education. They said he was pretty smart. His success brought him to be the president of the San Diego Bar Association in 1987. Some of the most prominent cases that Dan worked on was a group of workers. There was like a big steel plant or like a shipping yard or something in California and San Diego, where a bunch of workers, some were injured and some were killed. And Dan helped with that malpractice lawsuit to get a settlement. There was a female child that was sexually abused by her father. Dan was able to help her get like $1 million reward or something, like a cash reward for the abuse.
Wow.
And then he assisted, I think it was like $1.5 million, I think is what it said.
So he was good at what he was doing.
He really was. He also assisted a person that was, remember back in the 80s, all the troubles with blood transfusions with AIDS and HIV.
Yeah. AIDS came on the scene in 81. So we didn't know anything about it yet.
Yeah, to check the blood or to.
Yeah.
So there was a person that he helped get a settlement because he was exposed to AIDS from a blood transfusion. And it actually, this article that I read, it mentioned the name of the person, but I have no idea who the person was. And I didn't go any further into it. But just the way it was written was like, it was a name that was well known in California. So the point about it is that he just was a very prominent, a socialite. Like he was up there in like the high class society. So, like I was talking earlier about, Betty said that she did everything for the kids. Like she was at their sports games. If there was like, just imagine like that mom at the PTA doing all the baking, just everything. It's all about the kids. But what struck me though was that I read something where they had two maids, one to clean and one to be the nanny.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But yet she did everything. Another contradicting thing.
Yeah, that is. And just so Alexis is aware, during this time frame, women were slowly moving up on like what they did and their stuff, but there was still gender roles present and whatever. But Betty, wouldn't you agree that Betty kind of put her career aside and support her husband into the career he wanted? So she
definitely
sacrificed her own well-being for him to be the main provider and the successful one, while she got to be the stay-at-home mom, which that's what she wanted. Don't get me wrong, but she also did a lot of odds and ends jobs to make ends meet in supporting him during this time. And it was a long time. I mean, that's a lot of schooling that he went through.
And a lot of long days away from the family as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. In 1976, their third child, well, it would have been their fourth child, Daniel Jr., was born. And then Rhett, the youngest, was born in 1979. Dan, by this time, he was already running his own practice. He hired an assistant named Linda Kolkina. And this is where shit starts to get real.
Yep.
Like, even more real. So Betty couldn't understand why he would hire someone who, because Linda was a flight attendant. Now, I don't know. Did you find anything, Naoka, about Linda, like her qualifications or what she did for work in the past?
I heard she wasn't qualified for any of that. She couldn't even type.
That's all. Yeah, that's all that I heard too.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if you had found any kind of like conflicting information.
I think he hired her
because
based on her looks, to be honest.
Yes, because like, I mean, I know it's the movie, but dramatization, all that. But in the movie, it's like he sees her at a party and he's like, ooh, like, who's that? And then suddenly she's working for him.
She's described as like a younger Betty, like looks similar to her, just a younger version.
Mm-hmm. Long blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we should touch on this while we're on that subject, where, so when we'll have to show Alexis the picture of the wedding picture of Dan and Betty. I mean, Betty, she, even when she was older, she was still a pretty woman,
Mm-hmm.
like striking features, I think. But she was very thin, always fit. And then over time, she began to gain weight. And I think I mentioned this later, but she said that Dan would call her fat and old and boring.
I heard she went through like 9 pregnancies too. I mean, she was pregnant like every year almost. So of course there's going to be weight gain and you're getting older, but she wasn't even old or anything. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying like her body's going through things. I don't know.
Yeah, because she would have, at this point, he was like 40 and she would have been what, like mid to late 30s or about the same
She was
age,
35,
40?
36, something like that.
Yeah, so your body is just different at that age. And like you said, after having kids.
Yep.
Yeah, so Betty, she started suspecting right away that Dan was having an affair with Linda. And she gave Dan an ultimatum. She was like, you got 30 days to fire this bitch. And he kept telling her, like, I'm not having an affair. Like, it's not true. You're crazy. You're crazy. I'm not having an affair. So continues to deny the accusations. In 1983, Betty attempts suicide for the second time. Now, it's unclear if this incident happened before she attempted suicide or after, but like a 2-week time period, somewhere before or after, Dan, his birthday, which I think is the 40th or 41st maybe, she decides to go down to the office, surprise him. She dresses up really nice. She goes there and he's not there. She finds out that he's out to lunch with Linda, and there's all these balloons like decorated in the office. And there's in Linda's office, there's a picture of Dan on the wall. So she waits for him and he is gone like all day for hours. So she goes home. He ends up coming home and she confronts him. Now, what's conflicting too is on one report I read that she went home, burned his clothes. And then I also read that he came home and then she lit his clothes on fire after he came home. But did you see that, Naoka? Was it like all his clothes or was it?
I don't know if it was all his clothes, but yeah, they said that she went home and set them on fire. Can't say I blame her.
I don't think I blame her at all. The ultimatum was pretty fair. Like, hey, if you're not screwing her, just fire her and prove. I don't know.
She was mad.
I think so too. Like,
Yeah, we're
just
not
some of the
saying to
stuff
go
that's
burn
like,
anyone's clothes, FYI.
No.
We're just
Don't play with fire.
fire bad.
take a pair of scissors and just cut the clothes up.
Yeah.
That would be better.
Yeah.
No, but you can understand though why she was so angry.
Mm-hmm.
In 1984, so this is about a year later, the family moved into a rental home temporarily because their home, which they refer to as the Coral Reef House, there was something going on with the construction. So it was going to be a lengthy time that they were not going to be able to live in that home. So Betty found them a rental home. They moved into that home. And then in 1985, so another year later, Dan tells Betty that he's going to move back into the Coral Reef home because he needs some space. And he kind of tells her, like, I don't know if he was like, we need to be separated, or if he just flat out said, I want a divorce. And she was like, she just lost it. She said that Dan bought like all these new extravagant things for the house, and he wouldn't even let her use any of the old things. She said that he had no interest in the kids. He was having a midlife crisis, and she was hoping he would just get over it and, just like come around. And to make matters worse, Linda moves in with him into the Coral Reef home. So this makes her even more livid. She has said that Dan would mentally abuse her, which I was talking about, like the calling her fat and things like that.
Yeah, he was
would make
gaslighting
look
her.
crazy. Yes, that's a perfect word for that. Yes.
Like, I'm not cheating on you. Maybe you need to see a doctor.
Yes. And then could you imagine though, like your husband telling you one day that you're fat and ugly, and then the next day saying that shit to you? That's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder she was so depressed, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like we had talked about too, where she put all her heart and soul into making sure that he became the best he could be. And then he's not doing the same for her. She said too that Linda, which I think it was like Linda's friends were like, that never happened. But she said that Linda or Dan, both or one of the two, would send her like these packages or like big envelopes, and they would have ads of like wrinkle cream and fat diets. Like she would get these through the mail. It would be like addressed to her with these. Yeah.
That's so mean.
They think she was people think she was making that up though. But who knows? So once Dan, he's already living back at the Coral Reef house, Betty, she gets in her head. She's like, you know what? He thinks that it's so easy to take care of 4 kids. I'm going to teach him a lesson. And with him working and stuff, being gone all day, I can understand where she was going with this, but it kind of backfired on her. But she would drop one kid off at a time on his doorstep. But the thing was that Dan would show up at night and one of the kids would just be there on the doorstep with their bag. So Betty would drop them off not knowing if Dan would even be home from work that night.
Which is
literally
crazy.
Leaving them on the doorstep.
Yeah.
So part of that, Betty loses custody of the kids. But she continues, Betty swears that Dan and Linda are taunting her. When Betty would call the house, because, she would call the house, like after, at one point when the kids were living at Dan's, she would call to talk to the kids because she still loved her kids. I believe she honestly loves her kids. She would call, though, to want to talk to them, and she'd get the answering machine, and it would be Linda's voice. So in her head, she's like, this is my house that this bitch is living in. And her voice is on the answering machine. So she felt like they were rubbing it in her face. So she would start leaving these nasty, obscene messages, just saying, but the worst thing about it, though, was that she would do this in front of the kids. So the kids would hear her talking like this. And she would like call their father a scumball and all these things in front of them. Depending on what you read and watch as well, people would say that Betty was obsessed with the divorce. And then others will say, or well, Betty will tell you that Dan was obsessed with the divorce. And Betty started using one of the kids' keys to get into the house. So she would just go into the house unannounced whenever she felt like seeing the kids. She started tearing stuff up. Like, I think she broke a mirror or something. She took like a pie or a cake and smeared it all over Dan's bed and his clothing. Yeah. She used spray paint and spray painted the walls. I don't mean to laugh, but the scene in the movie where like Dan comes in and there's this cake or pie and it's literally like all over the armoire, like the bed, every inch of that room is covered in cake. It's crazy.
He drove her bananas.
She said that bananas. I don't, this one's a tough one because it's like, did he or was it her? Like, I don't know. Did he just make it worse?
I have a lot of thoughts on this when you're done.
Yes, I want to hear them. So one of the next things that happened was, and this is coming from Betty, Linda, Dan, and the kids were all on a ski trip together. And I guess the kids were telling their dad, like, oh, Mom's not feeling well. So he decides to send flowers to Betty from him and the kids. And the card says, I'm thinking of you. Sorry, you're not feeling well. And she felt like this was another dig at her. Like she said, of course I'm not feeling well. Like, you know, like you guys are on a trip with this other woman and I'm just sitting here alone. And I guess that was another thing to add to her list of getting her like fired up. One of the other things was she said, there's so many things. She said that Linda sent her a picture. There was a picture of Linda and Dan together in this magazine. It's like the San Diego Bar Association's monthly magazine. There was a picture of them in the magazine. She said Linda cut it out and sent it to her and said, eat your heart out, bitch.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
But it just from Linda's friends or people who knew Linda, that was not something in her character to do. So that was something else that they thought that Betty made up. Betty said that the kids did not like Linda either. And while the kids were living with their father, like they didn't have any birthday parties, they weren't involved in sports, none of that stuff. But I'm thinking that could be because at this time the kids were a little older. Maybe they weren't into those things. And there was some things that I read too where two of the kids were kind of in and out of trouble. So I feel like maybe it just had something to do with their age.
Didn't she have the kids be rude to her too? Or am I imagining that?
I think she might have tried that. Like kind of put into their head, like, don't like her kind of thing. Like,
yeah,
if you like her, then you're betraying me. Yeah.
I think so.
That's kind of, yeah. Like, I don't think it was ever clearly said, but it seems like it was that way. And also, too, like Linda and Dan, they were confiding in their friends, which Dan had a lot of friends that were lawyers. And he could not believe how lenient that he was being with Betty. But he thought if he would just be to her in a kind way, that eventually she would accept things the way they were. Like she would get over it, and move on with her life, which most people would, but she never did. In September of 1985, Dan filed for a divorce. He ended up having to get a restraining order. And this is when remember we were talking about the fining?
Mm-hmm.
So this is when this started. So what we're talking about, Alexis, is Dan was giving Betty so much money a month in alimony. And to kind of like figure out how to get her behavior to kind of chill, he started charging her $100 for every obscene word that she used, like when she would call the house, leave the messages, or just maybe just being in person, showing up. He would charge her $250 for trespassing, like just stepping foot on his property, and then $500 for entering the house, which, let me reiterate again, she felt like was still her house. And
do you remember how much she was getting a month?
Yes, it was like $16,000 a month.
Oh, wow. I'm sure with everything she was like doing, though, she didn't get that much.
Yeah. It was like dwindling down. I think at one point, like, she had she served like 2 or 3 days for like contempt or like violating the restraining order. I didn't write it down, but like they had like an amount that she was supposed to pay, but I don't know that she ever paid it. And she got an extra $28,000 cash reward from him, like after the divorce was final. So she had some money.
Who allows that money be deducted too? Like, did the judge set this amount and allow him to determine how much these punishments were? I'd like to know that.
You know what? I feel like that it was just something that he came up with.
Yeah, and it has to be.
Yeah, because that was one of the things too, was that Betty felt like that because of Dan's status and because of his job that he had, like he used his, I don't know, like pool to get what he wanted. You know what I mean? Because he was a lawyer.
Oh, yeah. That is hard to go up against an attorney.
Yeah, especially like he has a lot of friends and connections too.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there's no way she could win.
Mm-mm.
Which that would make her even more frustrated.
I think that was a big part of her thing too, is she felt it was unfair.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, part of this too, she became an outcast because you see in those movies all the time with the richy people where it's like, if you don't fit in that criteria anymore, then you're kind of like out of the club.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things too, was like that one of her friends, that's how she described it. In 1986, Dan sold that Coral Reef home and he sold it out from under Betty. She didn't know. And she got so mad that she took her car. Like she went over to the house to confront him, but she drove the car through the front door.
Yeah.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, no one's buying it now. Well, I guess someone already bought it.
Yeah, someone already did.
Dan said that when he went to like grab her, like pull her out of the car, he saw a knife under the seat. So did she plan to do that, or was she just active impulsively? Who knows? Why was there a knife under the seat?
Very good question.
She was very angry.
Very.
So she was admitted to a mental hospital for 3 days after that incident. And then in 1989, the divorce, that was, so 3 years later, 1989, the divorce was final. So they're divorced. She gets her reward. She has her $16,000 a month, minus whatever. That April, so they're divorced in January. That April, Linda and Dan get married. Some of the friends of Dan and Linda, they joked about Dan wearing a bulletproof vest at the wedding. And he hired security because Betty, at one point, she stole the wedding guest list. I guess she broke into the house and stole it. And then she would make threats, like she would show up at the courthouse, and I don't really understand this, how she would be able to do it, but she said that she would get a hold of the marriage certificate or something and deface it. But I don't know why they said she was showing up at the courthouse. Unless maybe she was showing up there all the time to try to fight against him, maybe.
No idea.
Months later in November, so this is in 1989, after receiving a letter threatening to take her back to court by Dan, Betty used her child's key to enter Linda and Dan's home. She walked into their bedroom and started firing a .38 caliber. For people who don't know what that is, it's a small handgun. She screamed as she fired. So she said it was like she doesn't remember really it happening. She just remembers the gun going off, and she's kind of like screaming. She shot Linda twice, once in the back of the head and once in the chest. Now, somewhere in here, we're going to insert a clip where Betty's talking about, it'd be more about the aftermath of like what she did after she shot them. But when police found Linda and Dan, Linda was laying on her stomach on the bed, and Dan was laying on the floor. He had been shot in the back. They believe that like he had tried to get up to get to the phone, because Betty says she remembers Linda saying, "Call the police." So Betty, freaked out, grabs the phone and pulls the cord out of the wall. And then she just leaves.
Isn't that you were scared that Dan was going to grab the phone?
Yes, because every time I went to talk to him, he'd call the police and have me arrested on the restraining order for trying to talk to him, for being within 100 yards of his house.
And now at that point in time, when you left, do you know whether anyone was hit?
No, I thought Dan was after me.
Okay. Now, did Dan say, do you remember Dan sitting up in bed and saying, "Okay, you shot me, I'm dead"?
No.
Have you ever said that? Have you ever repeated that to anybody?
I know Lily says I said that. So I must have said that, but I heard Lily say I said that. I don't remember that.
Okay. And have you repeated it since then to people?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because Lily said I said it, and it must have happened. Or I must have said it.
Do you remember where you went after that?
Well, I had nowhere to go. I mean, I was afraid Dan was after me. I was afraid when I went into that house of confronting Dan, and then when I left, I thought he was after me. And so I thought, oh man, you can't go home because he's going to have called the police, and the police are going to be waiting at my house, and I didn't want to scare the boys and everything, so I didn't go home. So I ended up at a phone in Claremont, at a gas station in Claremont.
Do you know how long?
And I didn't know what to do or where to go or who to talk to or what to do.
Do you remember how long you drove around before you got to that gas station?
No.
How long were you at that gas station?
I still don't even know where the gas station was. It's somewhere in Claremont.
Okay, but when you arrived at the gas station, were you there very long?
I don't remember.
Did you make a call right away?
I don't remember if it was right away. I did remember, I remembered one phone number.
Okay, and did you call some people from the gas station?
I only remember dialing and calling and talking to Diane Black.
Okay. Do you remember calling Lee?
Yes, later.
Okay. When you called, where did you go from there? Did you go over someone's house?
I called Lee and I told her I was in trouble or something. I don't remember really what I told her. But I said that I'll try and get to your house. And if I don't get to your house, that means they've arrested me, because the Suburban is real big and there weren't many cars out on a Sunday morning. And it has a load 'em up license plate. That's what it says. So it'd be real easy to get pulled over. And I said, if I don't arrive, honey, it's because the police got me. But I'll try and get to your house. So I went to Lee's house. And the reason for that is Dan didn't know where Lee lived. So if he was sending the cops to get me, he couldn't send them to Lee's house because he didn't know where Lee lived. Nobody knew where Lee lived except me.
When you got to Lee's house, how would you describe how you felt?
Well, whenever, especially this day, I felt bad that I was involving her. But at the same time, I tried to pretend like everything was okay. I guess, I don't know. I got there, I remember I took my camera out of the car. I gave her my camera, and I told her that I shot this gun at Dan's house, and I have to go give myself into the police. So I took off all my jewelry and stuff, but I know I did that, but I don't remember doing it. And then I sent Lee from her apartment to go check on Danny and Rhett, because I was worried that the cops were there and that the boys were afraid and stuff. So Jason and Lee went to check on Danny and Rhett.
Did you eventually turn yourself in that day?
Yes.
And were you taken to jail after you were arrested? Were you taken
Yes.
after you turned yourself in? Were you eventually taken to Las Colinas?
Yes.
Okay. And have you had conversations with a number of people since you've been in jail?
Yes.
When you first got to jail, how were you feeling?
I don't remember getting taken there. I know they put me in a suicide cell, stark naked for the first night I was there. And I was real shocking, and I don't remember being there or much of what happened. I just went where people told me to go.
Yeah. Now that first day or the first couple of weeks that you were there, how were you feeling emotionally or mentally?
It's hard to decide. I was very confused, but I was safe in jail. You know, they locked the rest of the world out when they locked me in this little corner cell, and that was good for me because then Dan couldn't get me, and I could just be safe in there, and I really liked that nobody could get me.
So her plan was to go to the house with this gun to talk to them, to get them to listen. She keeps saying in a lot of things that I've watched and read, I just wanted to talk to them and make them listen to me. But why would you need a gun to do that? So some of the, that's where the premeditation comes into play.
Yeah, definitely.
And also too, the time. Like this was they said that they were killed like 5:30 a.m. Who the hell goes to somebody's house that early in the morning to have a discussion? They're sleeping.
Yeah, that is a very odd time. I don't know about that.
And Betty had said too that her plan was to commit suicide. What was it you had said, Nayoka, about the suicide thing? That Dan had always thought that she would just commit suicide?
Yeah, I heard on like another thing that, I think it was the because she was on Oprah Winfrey getting interviewed by Oprah, and she made a statement about that Dan thought that she would just kill herself, but he never thought that it would like backfire on them or whatever. I might be saying that totally wrong, but you get the gist.
No, yeah, but I think you're right. Because he was quoted, somebody said that he had said at one point, one of us is going to end up, the only way for this to be over is one of us is going to end up being gone.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say dead, he just like said gone. So that correlates with what you're saying to me.
Plus, I mean, she was seen learning how she went out and bought a gun and was at the shooting range learning how to shoot it. And telling people openly, like she was gonna kill Dan. And I mean, people told Dan this, like, look, man, do you know Betty Broderick? She's saying she's gonna kill you. She was at the shooting range learning how to operate this gun she bought. But he still wasn't concerned enough, I guess. I don't know.
Why else would your friends tell you to wear a bulletproof vest at your wedding? They did find Betty, though, that same day, like later that day that she had shot them. And there was no issues when they arrested her. They found her in her car. It was said that, I don't know, like if you listen to the trial, Betty tells how she called somebody first. But one of the people that she called after she killed them was her daughter, her younger daughter, Lee. She called her to tell her that she killed her father. And I just thought that was freaking nuts myself. Like, you're calling your child, telling your child that you killed their father.
Yeah, that's very odd.
That's not traumatizing at all.
Yeah,
Not at all.
not at all.
And she told her daughter too that, like, the plan was that she was going to go to her daughter's house because no one knew where she lived. And I'm guessing at this point Lee had already moved out then, because she was one of the kids that was having, they said that she was having issues with, like, drugs and things like that. And supposedly she was written out of Dan's will. So it makes me wonder if she was having issues with her father. Like, how did he treat her?
Right.
So many questions.
Yeah, I have a ton of questions.
So there was 2 trials, one in 1990 and one in 1991. The first trial was a mistrial. The jury was split on the act of premeditation. So it was like a hung jury. The second one in 1991, Betty pled guilty, or I'm sorry, not guilty, but she was found guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder and sentenced to 32 years in prison. Betty, I have a quote here from Betty. She says, "I have no one to speak for me. This was a case of domestic abuse, a pattern of coercive control that lasted throughout our marriage until the day I killed him." Now, they were married. I don't think I said they were married for like 16 years. So now the 2 daughters, Lee and Kim, they went on to college outside of San Diego. They moved away. The 2 boys, they ended up living with close family members or close friends. And I don't even think it was family members. I think it was friends. Kim testified at Betty's trial about her mother's behavior after the divorce. So, like, when she drove the car into the house and all that stuff. And this is what really bothered me. So Kim said that she had talked to her mother on the phone one time, and her mother told her, "I wish you were never born, and I hate your guts," and called her a traitor.
Ooh.
And blamed her for her being in prison. Kim did an interview with People magazine in 1992 to share what her mother would tell her in these calls. And she continued on with saying, "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. But I think," she said, "but I think she's handling it better now." So I guess maybe her attitude towards Kim changed a little bit over the years. But Kim denied requests from her mom to write letters supporting her release from prison. Kim went on to write a book as well. It's called Betty Broderick, My Mom, The Kim Broderick Story. And in the book, there's a quote where she says, "The worst heartache and sorrow I could ever imagine outside of my dad being murdered." And she's referring to, like, what her mother said to her, like, about hating her, about hating her guts. It's like, how mean can you be?
Yeah. Yikes.
That's horrible.
Mm-hmm. And then in 2015, Betty wrote a book herself. It's called Betty Broderick, Telling on Myself. And she said that she still talks to all of her children. They visit her on Mother's Day, her birthday, and then once in the summer. And she said that she set these stipulations with the visitations because she doesn't want holidays and things like that to be unhappy for her kids. Like, she doesn't want their memories to be of being at a prison for Christmas. Lee was the first person, like I said, that Betty called after the murder. And it was said too that she said to Lee, "The bitch is dead." And she's one of the kids that she's kind of on her mom's side. She testified at one of Betty's parole hearings, and she said her mother should be able to live her life outside of prison walls now. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that she's on her side. Maybe I should say that she identifies with her more. Maybe she sees her in a different light. Dan Jr., now he said that his mother was still hung up on justifying what she did. He said, quote, "In my heart, I know my mother is a good person, but all along the way, she got lost. Releasing a lost person into society could be a dangerous mistake." How smart is that?
It's well said.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rhett, the youngest child, he learned about the death of his father and stepmother through a family friend. So I don't know if at the time, like where he was, like if he was even living at home, but he was on the Oprah show as well. And he says, "I just remember thinking, wow, I wasn't really surprised," he said at the time, like about the murder. He said, "On multiple occasions, my brother and I went to my dad and said to him that they wanted to live with their mom because they thought that her not having the kids living with her was making her crazy and that she could do something extremely irrational if she didn't have us." So I kind of get his point too. And Rhett was also, they said that he was sent to boot camps for a couple times for troubled kids. He said that he constantly felt like he was under the microscope, like everything that he did, it was blamed on his parents' situation. Like, like if he did something bad, oh, it's because of his parents, that kind of thing.
Got it.
He said that she's a nice lady. Everyone here would like her if they spoke with her. I can't even get through this. If they spoke with her on a topic other than his dad. Just don't bring up Dan. It should be fine. So Betty she went up for parole in 2010 and 2017. Of course, she was denied both. The next time she goes up for parole, she will be like in her 80s, and that will be like in 2032. So she's still just chilling in the state prison. I think she's in Chino, California. And that's all I got. So
I have so much.
Yeah.
I have so much. So I from what I understand is Betty actually has a lot of supporters out there. And let me tell you why. Because I think that all of us deep down can imagine being Betty and getting out of control, because this woman was living Betty's life. She had her husband. She lived in the same house that she was living in. They were going to the same places that Dan used to take her. She even refused to give Betty her wedding china. Okay. So the thought of her eating off of her wedding china drove her insane. Like it just did. They had the same photographer for their like wedding pictures or engagement pictures or whatever. Everything was like identical. This woman was basically living Betty's life, and Betty was just pushed off to the side. And you sacrificed for 16 years so you guys can live a good life, and you never reaped the benefits of that. And some people might say, well, he gave her $16,000 a month. That's plenty. You can live on that. But if she's technically entitled to more money because he made a lot of money, then why is it an issue to get your fair share? I mean, you sacrificed, you worked, you raised the kids, I don't know. So I think all of us have Betty inside. It's just not all of us would act on it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
So she does have supporters, people that send her Christmas cards and like, bravo to you. I was an abused woman, or my husband did this to me, or whatever the case may be. And then she has people that are like, you're a crazy person, you're evil, you're a monster. And it even seems like her kids are split on this, 50-50. Two are with her, two are not. So, and from what I understand as well, during this whole ugly divorce, and let me tell you, it was the ugliest divorce in that area during that time, maybe of all time. because of how horrific it all ended.
Was it the whole process drug out for like 5 years or something?
It was a long one. And before the divorce, she would have been more favored in the divorce because he had an affair and he was at fault. But they had signed in a new law in that state that it would be a no fault divorces to make divorces easier for both parties, more amicable, whatever. But it did not benefit Betty where it would have if that law wasn't changed. So there's that too. This is all hearsay. I mean, Linda supposedly sent her wrinkle cream ads, all these things that you were talking about. If that's true, that's so mean. And that is just poking the bear. You know what I mean? You're just poking the bear. And, but is it true? I don't know. We'll never know.
On one hand, is it like that Dan was just like, I'm done with you. I'm on to this next girl. Or, and you know, she's just like a not a guilty party to it. Like she's just, oh, I love this man, blah, blah, blah. Or did they like join up together and just be mean to Betty because she was crazy?
It's hard to say.
You know, is that why they sent the pictures or the ads if they did it?
And mind you, she did not believe in divorce, didn't want a divorce. This was hard for her. She was not moving on like most people would have just took the money, started a new life, and moved on. But she just could not do it. She was just had so much jealousy's ugly. And there was a lot of jealousy there. She was traded in for a younger model, basically, is what happened.
And like, did he even really work on the marriage? Maybe that's part of why she felt it was so unfair as well.
Who knows? I mean, there's so many factors going into this, and they both were pretty horrible to each other. I would hate to be divorcing an attorney for one. That would be horrible.
Yes.
But it does not give her the right to go in there and kill him and Linda. That's horrible. No one should be murdered. But I can see where people can relate to Betty because that would be their emotional, angry thought during it, I would think. I don't know. What do you think, Alexis?
Yes. Yeah.
I understand why she did it. Like, I mean, to see someone with the same house as you taking over your kids,
taking your identity.
Yeah. And the fact that, like, I mean, Linda knew he was married, right? Like she was
she knew.
And she just completely kind of was like, I'm okay with this. I'm gonna be his new wife one day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't excuse anyone for murdering at all. But I can see what kind of tipped her over the edge.
Yeah. And that's even if that happened, because again, all of it was hearsay. Linda's people, friends, and whatever would say she would never, ever do that. Never. Who knows? It's ugly, and it's just an ugly mess. It's fascinating. It's such a fascinating case.
A very toxic.
Well, and the thing is about, and the thing is about Betty too is like, if she did do one crazy thing, maybe that's all she did was one crazy thing. But no matter what she does after that, she's just crazy.
Yeah. And did he gaslight her? I mean, if he did, that's abuse in a different form. And the abuse situation from what I understand is that was brought up in the first trial, which got her the hung jury. But in the second trial, it couldn't be used. Like they didn't use any of the abuse things in that for her defense or whatever. But I mean, she will tell them that she wasn't abused, but emotionally, I feel like if that's true and he was gaslighting her, then she was. There's just a lot of different things. And as time went on, they changed the laws, like where domestic abuse was allowed to be brought up in divorce trials or whatever. So they try to appeal, and that it didn't happen. But there's just so much that goes into it. And the fact that she was trying to delay the divorce even more, from what I heard, she didn't go to court because they thought they wouldn't do anything because she wasn't there. And
oh no.
so she just didn't go. But, things went on anyway. And that was the same day that he sold the house.
Oh. And I wonder too, like, was she really crazy and she was the abusive one or mean to him, and he just was tired of it and found another woman and just wanted to be done with her?
Could be that too. Yeah, don't get me wrong, we're not saying one way or the other. We're just putting all the information out there and you can form your own opinion. We are not telling you one way or the other. I just can see how she has both supporters and haters for the same exact reasons. I get it. Yeah. I do. And I feel like I said, I feel like we all had that Betty moment at one point in time, especially when you're young and in a relationship, and there's a breakup and you kind of go crazy a little bit because you're like, oh my God, I thought I was going to grow old with him and I loved him so much, and blah, 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 whatever the case may be. And, plus I've been through a divorce myself. It's ugly. I don't know. It's such a fascinating story. And I'm so glad that you brought it up. I literally listened to so much about it.
It's so funny too, because Alexis, you should watch just a little inkling of it. Cause at first you're like, she's a narcissist. And then you watch it more and you're like, wait a minute. Oh, I feel sorry for her. And then you're like, she's crazy.
Yes.
You go back and forth.
Yeah. What's the name of the movie? I need to watch it.
A Woman Scorned.
A Woman Scorned.
Even if you just watch the Oprah interviews on YouTube. Okay. That's why I first saw it. Rachel's like, what do you think? And I was like, she is psycho. She's psycho.
Yeah.
And then the more I listened to her, I'm like, I feel so bad for her. And maybe she was just poked, and this is what happened. And then you do go back and forth.
It was so funny because that morning you had said that. And then I think Naoka went to lunch or something. And she was like, I think my opinion's changed.
Yes, because I was listening to more about her. We should read her book. I'm sure that will give us more insight. But it's from her opinion.
It's just so hard to determine the truth because
they're not here to defend themselves.
Yeah, they can't defend themselves. And honestly, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of
both
sides, and plus crazy people tend to completely believe 100% what they're saying. They don't think.
Yeah, and they're convincing.
They don't think that they're lying or they're crazy, you know? So it makes it hard.
That's a very good point.
It is. Very good point. Yeah, definitely. I just think that was such a crazy case. Oh my God. I loved it. Loved it. You told it so well.
This was fun.
So much information.
It was fun again.
Yeah.
I had no idea what to expect coming in, but that was a 10 out of 10.
Oh, she loved it. 10 out of 10.
Oh, Alexis.
It's so nice to have a guest.
Come back more often.
Oh,
I know. This is really
anytime.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It was very fun. So
see, this pays off where you always have to wait on me.
It does. I'm just messing with you. I don't always have to. I make her wait too. Things happen.
You're the more organized one.
I'm the more organized one. No,
by far.
I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. But even as I was painting. I've been painting this room for a couple weeks because it's I only work on it on the weekends or whatever. But all last night I was painting till 12:30 at night, and I was listening to all the things I could find about Betty, and I learned so much. I'm I don't know where I got all my information from. I was learning a lot from everywhere, but
let me tell you, that room is going to be badass though.
I hope so. We'll see. I can't wait for you to see it.
I know.
I can't wait to have my bedroom back. I mean, it's just so crowded of stuff because you have to empty space to make room to paint everything. But anyway, well, that concludes this week's episode. If you're craving more Operation Evil, check out our Patreon for bonus episodes. We do put one out per month. Just as a reminder, if you want to start your own podcast, check out our link. It'll be in the show notes to Buzzsprout. And that way, it's easy way to launch your podcast, get your show listed on every major platform, and it tells them that we sent you. Plus, you get a $20 Amazon gift card. So you're not missing out on anything. And it supports us. But anyways, we'll be back next week with a new episode. We will also be putting out our bonus episode soon. I think that's all I got. Check out
Don't
Alexis's
forget to
Etsy
check out
store. Alexis, plug yourself one more time.
Yeah, business name is Black Cats and Bitchcraft, or you can just find me on Facebook if that would be easier than Etsy. And I have a link to my shop there.
There we go. Awesome. Well, everyone stay safe. Don't be Betty. Don't make a permanent decision based on temporary emotion. I love that quote so much. I've said that a lot lately, but anyway, that is all. We love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.